Welcome back inside Section 925 Pod Center, our last pod of the Lafayette Art and Wine Festival, here with our Stanford football insider, Chris Hawkins. Chris, welcome back inside the Pod Center.
Thanks, great to be here, Cooper.
Last night, Stanford and USC. USC long has been the marquee program of the Pac-12, and Stanford the past couple of years has, well, since Harbaugh has really turned around the program, has become the team in the Pac-12. Same question we asked Jay Torchio: is Stanford the new USC?
Well, that's sort of flattering to get a question like that based on the history of the programs. But I would like to say they are getting there, but it's a long road. So we're through 2 games this year, so we've got a long way to go. But beating USC in a sort of workmanlike fashion yesterday, that's the 3rd victory over USC in the last 12 months. So it's becoming sort of expected down on the farm to beat a program like USC. So I guess the program is at a stage right now where USC has been in the past, where they go into these conference games expecting to win.
So McCaffrey, everybody talks about McCaffrey, and the guy is a big play guy, right? And then last night we saw the end around from Michael Rector, and you were at the game, I guess.
Yes.
What do you know about Rector? What can you tell us about him? Because I hadn't heard of him until last night.
Oh yeah, Rector's a super athlete. Rector was expected to be drafted this past year, but decided to stay in school. So he's actually a 5th-year senior. Was very productive 2 years ago. The thing is because Stanford doesn't really need to pass that often, he doesn't have the big numbers that you'd expect, so he's not going to be a guy getting the all-league honors.
If I asked right now the crowd here to name the Stanford quarterback, I'll bet you 1 out of 10 could name the Stanford quarterback.
If that. I would say 1 in 100.
Can you name the Stanford quarterback? The one right now.
Yeah. Good, you see Brad.
Okay, Ryan Burns, he's right.
He is, he's the one.
He's the one that could name him. Ryan Burns is the quarterback.
But he has an unfair advantage because he actually played at Stanford, so here's call him out.
Here's my point. Are we now talking about a Stanford program that is so well established? And you've got a guy like McCaffrey, he's a maybe once in a generation type player, if that. That it doesn't really matter who his quarterback is as long as he's a serviceable guy. Can Stanford now have a system quarterback and it doesn't really matter who it is?
That's a very interesting question, and I think you're on the right track there. I think it's come to that point where the scheme is so sound and the players executing the scheme are so sound and so different than what you're seeing across most of college football that I think you can sort of insert a programmatic quarterback into that spot and get similar results, but it does begin and end with the offensive line and really controlling the clock. There's not a lot of pressure on that quarterback when you're in 3rd and 2 versus 3rd and 8. So I think as long as the line does their job and you have a guy like Christian McCaffrey back there making people miss and picking up first downs, you can insert a lot of different types of quarterbacks back there just to get the job done.
Yesterday I was watching the game, and it seems like the history of watching Pac-12 football is USC speed, power, and even when Stanford in the Harbaugh years started challenging SC, you could tell SC was the more talented team. Yesterday, it looked like Stanford was having no trouble with them. And does this game yesterday tell us more about Stanford, or does it tell us more about USC?
That's a good question, Josh. I would say this a little of both. I think you see with Stanford, the talent level is finally up near the USC talent level. If you look at the recruiting services, it's not. USC still out-recruits Stanford year in, year out with their 5-star recruits. But I think what you see on the field is they are as athletic, and they do have the size. I mean, if anything, Stanford's doing, they're sort of pushing them around. The thing that USC used to make a living off was pushing teams around. So I think Stanford finally has the depth, and the success is bred success, where they now, every team's going to lose a couple of players throughout the year. And Stanford's at the point now where they can put a 2nd-string guy and a 3rd-string guy in there, and it really doesn't drop off much. And that used to be what the USC's, the Washingtons used to be able to do. So Stanford's able to do that now. And I think USC is too. But that, when USC got all that trouble a couple years back, and they got a lot of scholarships stripped away, they're still fighting back from that. That is still not the deep USC teams you've seen in the past. And that team's also young, and they've had, that quarterback's inexperienced. So I think, unlike the Stanford system you talked about, USC's system, I think, did rely a lot more on the quarterback to make good decisions, and yesterday he just didn't.
Has Stanford done anything in their recruiting differently to identify that kind of talent that they're getting, or is that just a result of the program being successful?
I think what's happened is that, once again, success breeds success, and Stanford is now getting kids, they recruit nationally because of the academic standards, but now they're getting the kids that used to go to Notre Dame, the kids that used to go to Michigan, the kids that used to go to some of the great schools in the Midwest and the Northeast. They're now coming to Stanford, which is a huge advantage. And if you look at the Stanford roster, there aren't that many California kids on that roster. So the national recruiting has really made a big difference. And it's great when you're playing a Notre Dame, when you're playing a USC, when you're playing these teams from other parts of the country that traditionally have had more talent than you. You're actually playing with their guys they used to get.
So I'm going to turn something around on you that we usually use with Torchio. And Cal fans will say, why can't our academic standards are as tough as Stanford's? Why is Stanford able to recruit these great athletes, can meet the academic standards and be great football players, and we don't get them at Cal? We have to get some of the leftovers from Stanford, right? The guys, why can they get into? Why can Stanford do this and Cal can't?
Well, it's a private school, for one thing. I think that has more of a draw than some public schools. It's there's 6,000 undergrads at Stanford. I think there's probably 30,000 at Cal. So I think you're getting a different academic experience, different college experience, which might be more appealing to some of those kids. Cal's a public school tuition. Stanford is multiples of that in terms of cost. So the value of a scholarship is probably a lot more. I think the Stanford brand is a pretty strong national brand relative to a public school. So I think those are some of the factors that make a difference in recruiting. But Cal does, once again, Cal's success will also breed success. So this, their offense obviously is hitting on all cylinders right now, which gets a lot of high school kids excited that want to play high scoring up-tempo offense. So that kid might choose a Cal over Stanford. If you're a wide receiver, you might want to go to Cal and catch 10 balls a game versus blocking from McCaffrey all day.
And the alternative to that is, the converse is, Cal can't seem to recruit anybody to play defense.
That's true, which is a great mystery to me, because in the past, I did coach at Cal for 2 years. In the past, Cal did have good defensive players. I mean, there's no reason Cal should not be good on defense. I think the offensive style they play puts a lot of pressure on the defense because they can be really quick 3-and-outs, and the defense can be on the field a lot of the day. But it makes no sense to me that you wouldn't have the ability to recruit very good defensive players at Cal, which maybe the success they're having now will change that. And maybe you'll get some guys that do want to come there and play defense as part of a winning program.
Do you look at the success of Cal early this season being Texas as a good thing in general for the Pac-10? Or are you, through and through Stanford, you want Cal to lose? Or would you want Cal to be good so that makes the big game maybe more meaningful?
Absolutely. I mean, the way it works these days, I root for Cal against everybody except for the big game. I want the Pac-12 to do well. It's really hard to root for USC, but I'll even root for USC when they play non-conference opponents, because you need strength of schedule to get it. Stanford was left out of the playoff last year because of strength of schedule. So we need Oregon State to beat Portland State. We need Cal to beat Texas. That's really important, more so than it's ever been with the way the playoffs are.
You watched the Cal game last night. What's your take on Cal this year?
Oh, geez, fun to watch. That quarterback's the real thing. Really impressive that a guy can come in as a graduate transfer. I guess it's an offense he's run in the past, but really impressive to come in at such a short amount of time and be thrown for 500 yards a game. And he seems to be really in sync with his wide receivers, who I think are, in general, quite young. So I think it's fun to watch. I think it'll be interesting when they start playing, some of the Pac-12 games. And I know there's not a lot of depth at Cal, but I've been really impressed that the quarterback gets the ball out quickly. They protect him pretty well. The offensive line is a lot better, I think, than most thought. So things are going pretty well right now in Berkeley.
As I look at the Stanford schedule, you get UCLA, you get the Washington schools, and then you go to Notre Dame, which, boy, they've sort of laid an egg out of this after being much hyped. They sort of laid an egg out of the gate here. Colorado, Arizona, Oregon State, Oregon. We got Cal at the end of the season at Rice. Any of these schools, I'm stealing Josh's. Go ahead, Josh. I'll let y'all steal your question.
You know, it looks like Stanford's sort of primed to run the table, at least be the front runner in the Pac-12. As a Stanford alum, who are you the most scared of?
I would say the next 2 weeks. The next 2 weeks are big because you're at UCLA. A UCLA team that, like USC, is very talented, a bunch of five-star guys. You're playing at the Rose Bowl. Stanford, I think, has beat UCLA 9 straight, which is unprecedented. So I'm sure UCLA is looking forward to having the Cardinals come into into the Rose Bowl. And they're playing at Washington on a Friday night. I mean, Washington's been down for a long time, and that's a tough place to play when they're rolling. And on a Friday night, it's going to be a fever pitch. I don't know who Washington plays this week, but I imagine whoever they play, they'll beat. They look good, and they're Chris Peterson is a really good coach. So he's going to have those guys even. He's going to have those guys ready to play and not make the stupid mistakes they've been making under their other coaches they've had recently. So that'll be a really tough football game. I think kind of like Stanford, they don't make a lot of mistakes. Like yesterday's Stanford game, USC beat themselves with 5 false start penalties in the first half. And those are drive killers. So Washington's not going to do that. So I think that game, the next 2 weeks, will tell the story about the season.
When a team's going to compete with Stanford, what are they going to do to be successful against them?
I think the teams that have traditionally given Stanford a problem are the really athletic teams. You have the athletic quarterback, like a Louisville. Like a Louisville would be, I guess they would scare anybody at this point, but traditionally Stanford has not had the athletes to hang with a team like that, like in Oregon, that can spread you out and make plays in space. So I feel like those are still the teams that probably give us the biggest problems, just on the defensive side. I love Big 12 teams, the Big 10 teams that want to run you over, because that plays into Stanford's strength. So I guess it's like the Oregons, Washington State. For some reason, Washington State seems to have Stanford's number in terms of scoring points, and the quarterback will throw 500 plus, but Stanford seems to beat them. But teams like that, make me nervous.
Yeah, I would say they're, as you may know, our Cal insider Dave Torchio picked Washington State as sort of his dark horse in the Pac-12 North this year. Of course, they're 1-2 now. They beat Idaho yesterday, but they have not come out as strong as they expected. But that's somebody that as a team still gives you some nightmares.
Absolutely. Washington State did this last year. They lost their first game last year, I think, to Portland State, and came back. And Stanford needed 2 very lucky interceptions in the fourth quarter to win that game.
As we come to an end here, David Shaw passed John Ralston to become the second most winningest coach in Stanford football history. If you would, just for a minute here, what has David Shaw meant for this program, or what does he mean for the program?
Well, what's interesting is when David first came up with Jim Harbaugh from San Diego. And David's dad, Willie, was actually one of my coaches way back when. So his father coached for 30 years in the NFL and college. So David knows coaching, knows it well. And I think he was under one of the best coaches, if not the best coach in football right now, Jim Harbaugh. So when David came in and had success, I think a lot of people thought, okay, he's just drafting off Harbaugh, the foundation Harbaugh put in place. But not only did David do that, he actually took it almost to the next level with how he's innovated the offense, how he's changed up the scheme, he's kept recruiting going well. So I'm pleasantly surprised with what David Shaw has brought to the program. I think he understands the importance of continuity and stability to the program. So every year he's a candidate to get the next head coaching job. And I think he's happy staying at Stanford, and that really helps recruiting. So I think we're lucky to have him.
I'd be happy to stay there too, I think.
Yeah.
So with that, I'm going to give you a chance to do a plug here at the end. So I want you to, while I do our plug, you think about what your plug is to the extent you haven't already thought about it.
That sounds good.
With that, let me say this is our last podcast of the weekend here at the Art and Wine Festival. We'll A last shout out to our friends up the street here at Venture Quality Goods. As you know, 3571 Mount Dallin Boulevard. Lots of Warriors gear, signs there if you're interested to that kind of thing. Or if you just want high quality clothing, men's clothing especially up the street. Tell Tom up there that Section 925 sent you. And Squeaky Pops, the all natural frozen treat favorite kids and adults alike. Hot day is a good time for a Squeaky Pop. So, Josh from the 209. First of all, Josh, thanks for coming down and joining us in the Pod Center today. Becoming not just a figment of our imagination, an actual human being in the flesh, Josh from the 209.
I am a real person, thank you. Speaking of the 209, I want to give a shout out to Pine Street Physical Therapy. Pete and Kevin out there, for those of you who may or may not know, no one really knows. I had ankle surgery this summer, and twice a week, I voluntarily endure their torture to get me back on my feet, literally. So, Pine Street Physical Therapy. Pine in California, in Stockton, California.
And that's straight from the 209. Chris, what do you got?
I guess I would say my shout out would be to the Camp Lindo boys and girls water polo programs. They're off to a good start, and we're just getting cranked up right now. So definitely to the Campo Polo programs, and also to the CC United water polo program, which had a fantastic Junior Olympics this summer, finished 5th nationally. So that would be my shout out.
All right, Chris, well, thanks for coming in. Josh, coming down from 209 to be here today. Great having you guys, as always.
Great to be here.
Toodaloo. Go out and have a Joe Raw type day.